easy top 5. However, I did have 5 other books that I gave 5 stars this year, and we're going to run through those super quick. Okay, so the other 5 books that I rated 5 stars this year are The Love Hypothesis by Hazelwood. I started reading romance this year. If you had asked me up until July if I read romance, I would have been like, no, I don't read romance. I don't like rom-coms. I don't. I have a whole shelf. This whole shelf is romance now. I'm a completely different person. I'm a totally different person. And The Love Hypothesis by Hazelwood is the cream of the crop, the best that I read this year. I'm a huge Raylo person, so like obviously I was excited for it. And then it turned out to just be a phenomenal book on its own. So absolutely loved this. I read it twice. I usually make myself wait about at least a year before I reread a book. I reread this 2 months after I read it because you know what it was? It was Empire the Vampire. I was like, I need to heal from this book. And so the day after I finished Empire the Vampire, I was like, we're purging it. We're purging it from the brain. I read The Love Hypothesis again. Lore by Alexandra Bracken. This was our book club book for March, I believe. This was the January Owl Crate book. This was just a really, really good time. I want to say this might have been... Was this my first 5-star read of the year? No, it wasn't my first. It was up there. It was one of the early 5-star reads. I read this back in March. And I had a wonderful time with this. This was exciting. This was stressful. I loved the cast of characters. I loved the writing. I loved the pacing. I loved the actual story. The Aegon. It's like it's not a retelling of Greek mythology, but it's a modern take on Greek mythology. And it's very feminist, which I loved. It uses my favorite version of the Medusa story, which, side note, the version of Medusa that I prefer is that she was not cursed for having slept with somebody, or not punished for having been assaulted, but she was given a gift that no man could ever touch her or hurt her again because she could turn them to stone with her eyes. And that what was done to her was a gift and not a curse. Anyway, that's in here. Like, it's not a spoiler because it's just like a side mention at one point. That's just the version of Medusa that this uses. It was so good. It was so good. I absolutely loved it. Phenomenal time. Legendborn by Tracy Dion. Okay, I think this was before Lore, so definitely that was not my first 5-star of the year. This was a really, really fun YA, like, Southern... it's not college. They're like at college, but they're taking early college classes. They're still in high school, so they're still teenagers. But Southern magic, Arthurian legend, kind of, again, not a retelling, but a modern imagining of these things. And the story of this, the plot, the actual, like, I'm a sucker for the tasks trope. And this just delivered. I can tell that I read this back in, like, February, I think, because some of the details are a little fuzzy. But I know that I had an absolutely incredible time. I cannot wait for Bloodmarked. The way that this ended, this was just great. This was really, really great in a lot of different ways. I am so excited for Bloodmarked. I can't wait. I think that comes out like soon. That's like soon. So excited. Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. This was the book, this was the second longest that had been on my shelf. So I had 2 John Green books, and they were both books that had been unread and on my shelf for the longest amount of time. I had An Abundance of Catherines, which I'd had for 7 years sitting on my shelf. And then I had this one. I'm going to restart my camera because it's about to tell me I'm going to run out of time. So yeah, Turtles All the Way Down. It had been sitting on my shelf unread for like 3 years. I actually went on like an adventure to get this book because it came out while I was in New York City. I was on vacation. I was there for Comic-Con, and I was like, I'm not going to be home when this book comes out. I have to find a bookstore next to where I'm going to be staying, and then I have to, like, find the one that I want, and I went hunting. I went hunting for this book. I went early because I was like, I can't wait until the kids get out of school, because all the teenagers are going to, like, descend on the bookstore and get the book before I get it, so I had to get it while teenagers were still in school. Did not end up being a problem. And then I had to find one that had the signature that I wanted, because they were all signed, but like some of them were different and some of the colors were more rare and some of them said DFTBA and some of them had drawings. I went on a fucking hunt for this book, all right? And then it sat on my shelf unread for 3 years. What is wrong with me? So I did finally end up reading this. I read it in one night and I, like any John Green book, I cried a lot. This was similar to Addie in like the way that it was personal to me. I felt I don't have anxiety in the way that this main character has it. I don't have it quite as severe. I don't have it nearly as severe as this person has it. But again, reading about mental health that feels so relatable and feels so similar to me. And there's just something about seeing that on a page and realizing that somebody gets it. Somebody understands the things that are in your head that even you don't understand. And that is very emotional. That's very visceral. Like, that feeling is a lot. It's hard to describe. But other than that, like, is that why it's a 5-star? Probably. Is it also just a good book on top of that? Yes, I did like the plot. I did like the story. But it's almost like the plot is secondary to the emotional journey and the mental, like the mental health journey that the character goes on. That's the really important part in the whole thing. And it was just, I cried a lot. I really loved it. Will I read it again? Probably not. I probably won't read this book again. Not because it's bad, but because I don't think I can go through that again. I don't think I can do it again. Or if I do, it'll be like years from now when I've forgotten how much it hurt. In a good way. In a good way. So, 5 stars. John Green. And finally, my other 5-star read of the year was Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell. This book is so good. This book was so good. When I tell you, I was giggling and smiling and like I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed for me, okay? I'm a grown woman, okay? But I was giggling. I was in it. So this is a hard one. I don't really know whether to shelve this with sci-fi or romance because it's both. It's a romance book in a sci-fi setting. It's a sci-fi book with a lot of romance. I don't know. All I know is it's phenomenal. It is super, super tropey. Honestly, what sold me is, so it's Tor, which is my favorite publisher. And so I follow them on Instagram and they were posting like promo for this book. And they posted a bunch of tropes that are in this. And I was like, I'm sold. So it's arranged marriage, it's mutual pining, one bed, share body heat for warmth, looks like a cinnamon roll will actually kill you, looks like he'll kill you is actually a cinnamon roll. Like, it's just the best arranged marriage space husbands book that I didn't know I needed. And it was actually phenomenal. It was so good. And again, it was emotional. Like, I teared up sometimes. I really loved the characters in this. Like, I would absolutely die for Keem and Jinin. I love them. I love them so much. I will protect them with everything in me. They're my favorite. I had a lot of things. I had a lot of feelings about this book. So that was my other 5-star of the year. So the honorable mentions, the 5 stars that did not quite make it into my top 5. The Love Hypothesis was very close. Legendborn, Lore, Turtles All the Way Down, and Winter's Orbit. What a year. Oh, there were a couple honorable mentions that I will say before I head out, and these were 4.5s, almost 5 stars. One was... Alright, I went and grabbed a couple of these. Super quick, these are some rapid fire PS honorable mentions postscript. These are 4.5 stars that were like so close to hitting that 5. Gear Breakers by Zoe Hanamakuta. This is another giant mecha feminist revolution fighting book. Phenomenal. Absolutely so much fun. So much fun. Love that book. I thought that book was a standalone until the exact second that it leaves on a cliffhanger. And I was like, what do I do now? All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. This was my first Mariana Zapata book. This was again in my like romance, finding that I like romance books. This was the best idea. One of the best ideas that I had all year was waiting to read this book until I went on vacation, because this book is about a woman who starts her life over, basically drives out to Colorado, moves into this house in the middle of nowhere in this little tiny town in Colorado, and goes hiking a bunch and reconnects with nature and her mother and a lot of other things. But like, that's kind of what's going on. And I took a vacation where I I went and stayed in a cabin, or like a little place, a little Airbnb out in the middle of nowhere, and I went hiking a bunch. And saving this book for that trip, next fucking level, best idea I've ever had in my life. Neon Gods by Katie Robert. This is 18 plus. I'm not recommending this book to children. I read a lot of Persephone and Hades retellings this year. This was one of the best ones. This was phenomenal. I blasted through the A Touch of Darkness series by Scarlett St. Clair. Those are not, don't get me started on those. This is so much better. This is what I wanted those to be. This book is fantastic. This is a Hades and Persephone retelling in like a modern Greek mythology Olympus thing. Literally the only thing that kept this book from being a 5 for me was the world building and the fact that I'm still super confused about like what this Olympus actually is and where it is and like where it exists. Is it modern? Is it our world? Is it not our world? I have a lot of questions about the world, which is why it's not a 5. But oh my god, this book was phenomenal. Speaking of Hades and Persephone, Lore Olympus. Rachel has been trying to get me to read this series for years. For years, my friend Rachel has been trying to get me to read this. And I kept saying, I know, because it's a webtoon, so it's like little chapters that you read in just a couple of minutes and they come out once a week. And I was like, I cannot live like that. I truly can't, because I will catch up in like 5 hours and then I'll just be on this week-to-week schedule and I can't do it. I don't want to do it. So this was finally coming out, the physical version of the first volume. And I was like, I will get this and I'll start it and then we'll go from there. So I read this and then I binged all, 187 episodes of Lore Olympus in 2 days and caught up like I fucking knew I would. And it's so good. It's so good. It's phenomenal. And keeping it on the Greek mythology, my last honorable mention goes to Cersei by Madeline Miller. This is a feminist retelling of the Greek myth of Cersei. And fucking incredible. Fucking incredible. I do recommend being in a good headspace for this. I actually had to take a couple-week break. This book is really sad, and my cat died in the middle of me reading this, and I was like, we're gonna put this away and not look at it for a while because I can't take it. This book is beautiful, but it is so sad. So sad. So make sure you're in a good headspace for a sad book. You know, you want a good cry. Her writing is incredible. This is probably one of the most beautifully written books I've ever read in my life. And just that take, the idea that Cersei is kind of this side character in a lot of men's stories, and she's the Witch of Aiaia and created Scylla and Charybdis, and that waylaid Odysseus on his way home and seduced him to stay with her and turns men into animals. And the idea of just looking at that and being, as a woman, looking at that story and saying, okay, why would she have done any of those things? What happened in her life to turn her into that person? And what are the men telling her story not saying about why she did all those things? That is amazing! And this book is phenomenal. Okay, I'm done. All right. That's it. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. It's taking too long. This video is already too long. I fucking know this video is going to be like 40 minutes long. Oh my god. I talk too much. Anyway, that was a lot. Hopefully I get this edited and like put up relatively soon. But yeah, I like just sitting around talking about books. So like once I actually get in the flow of like talking about it, I'm good to go. Editing this is gonna suck just because I don't like editing. And I talked too much. This was a much longer video than I wanted it to be. But those were my top 5 books of the year. Iron Widow, Little Thieves, Pride of the Orange Tree, Project Hail Mary, and The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Honorable mentions to The Love Hypothesis, Lore, Legendborn, Winter's Orbit, and Turtles All the Way Down. And then postscript honorable mentions to Gear Breakers, All Roads Lead Here, Neon Gods, Lore Olympus, and Cersei. That was a lot! Why did I talk about 15 books? I was going to talk about 5. I was going to talk about 5 books, and it was 15. All right. I will see you all next time, which is a weird thing to say. I'm not going to see you. I'm looking at a camera. You'll see me. You'll see me next time. This is why I don't do YouTube. Peace.